Ladies and gentlemen, let's get real. We've all been there. You've met someone who lights up your world, someone who seems to have all the qualities you desire, someone who at times makes you feel like they're just one step away from reaching out, but then they don't. It's confusing, it's frustrating. But here's the truth. This dynamic has very little to do with you. It has everything to do with the internal battles they're facing and how they view connection and vulnerability. You might be asking, why would someone crave something they're not willing to pursue? Well, the answer is simple but deep, my friends. It's because we all crave the idea of what something could be, but we fear the reality of it. Let's break this down. The key to understanding why someone craves but never contacts you lies within their own emotional landscape. When they're in the presence of a person who represents something genuine, authentic, and powerful, it can trigger feelings that they simply don't know how to deal with. Maybe they're afraid of losing control. Maybe they're not ready to risk vulnerability. And here's where the magic happens. It's in your understanding of how to handle this situation that empowers you. It's your response to their actions or lack thereof that determines your path forward. Are you chasing something that's unattainable, or are you positioning yourself as someone who knows their worth and won't settle for uncertainty? When we stop chasing and start empowering ourselves, we align with the reality that we deserve more than someone's scattered affections. It's time to stop asking why and start asking, what is this teaching me about myself? When we talk about why someone craves you but never contacts you, it's important to recognize that often the issue isn't rooted in something you're doing wrong. Instead, it's about their internal battles. These battles are emotional, psychological, and sometimes even deeply subconscious. People are complex, and they don't always understand why they act the way they do. They might crave your presence, your energy, or the connection you offer, but they simultaneously feel an internal resistance to reaching out or engaging with you on a deeper level. One of the most powerful forces at play in these situations is fear. Fear in its many forms can paralyze people and make them retreat when they most need to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is a powerful thing. It requires us to expose parts of ourselves that we often keep hidden out of the fear that we might get hurt or rejected. When someone craves connection but avoids making contact, it's often because they're afraid of what it might mean. They may want the closeness and intimacy, but are terrified of the potential emotional risk that comes with it. In many cases, self-worth is directly tied to their fear of rejection. People often fear that by reaching out or getting too close, they will be exposing themselves to the possibility of being judged, not accepted, or even abandoned. For many individuals, their self-worth is fragile, and that vulnerability feels like an emotional gamble they're not ready to take. They crave the connection because it validates something deep inside them. They want to feel seen and valued, but they simultaneously resist reaching out because that act would require them to risk being seen fully, which can feel too overwhelming. Then there's the fear of the unknown. Relationships, no matter how exciting or promising they might seem on the surface, always involve an element of uncertainty. When someone experiences this craving but pulls back from initiating contact, they might be avoiding the uncertainty that could come with pursuing a relationship. They wonder, what if things don't work out? What if the connection they crave isn't as fulfilling as they hoped? What if they get too involved and then get hurt? These questions can loom over their decisions, causing them to crave the idea of connection but never move toward it. And while these fears are happening internally, on the outside, the person may act distant or detached. This can create a confusing situation for you because you're left wondering why someone would crave something they aren't willing to pursue. But the truth is, their fear and internal conflict are far stronger forces than their desire for connection in that moment. The truth is, when someone is fighting their own emotional battles, it's not a reflection of you or your worth. It's about them and what they are or aren't ready to face within themselves. Craving something and actually pursuing it are two very different things. We all know the feeling of wanting something intensely. Whether it's a new relationship, an opportunity, or even a change in our life, the desire is there, but the action isn't. This dynamic is especially apparent when someone craves your presence or attention, but never seems to take the initiative to contact you or pursue the relationship further. It's almost as if they're caught in an emotional paradox where their internal desire doesn't align with their external behavior. The truth is, craving something is often driven by fantasy or idealization. When someone craves you, they might be picturing a perfect version of what could be, a version that is free from the uncertainties, messiness, and emotional challenges that inevitably come with deeper relationships. The craving stems from the idea of what you represent, the potential of a connection, the attraction, the promise of something fulfilling. But when it comes down to actualizing that craving by taking the first step, They hesitate often because they fear that the real experience won't live up to the idealized version in their mind. It's easy to crave something that doesn't yet exist in the real world because there's no risk involved when it's still just a desire in your head. This gap between craving and action can also be attributed to the comfort of familiarity. When something is just a craving, it remains in the realm of the mind, and in this state, it's easy to fantasize about the benefits without confronting the reality of what it takes to make it happen. Actually acting on that craving would require effort, vulnerability, and possibly even sacrifice, which many people are not prepared to give up. The pursuit requires a level of emotional energy and commitment that can feel daunting. The initial desire to be closer connected may seem exciting, but the reality of sustaining that closeness can feel overwhelming. Another factor at play is the fear of loss. When someone craves you but never contacts you, they might be protecting themselves from the potential of rejection or disappointment. The fear of not getting what they want can be so strong that it holds them back from taking action altogether. The craving remains a safe, private yearning, while the potential reality of contacting you and facing the unpredictability of what could follow, whether good or bad, is a risk they're unwilling to take. The human experience is filled with moments of craving without the follow-through, but in relationships, this discrepancy between craving and action can cause confusion and hurt. While craving something often feels intense and real, the act of following through on that craving takes courage. It requires someone to move from the fantasy of what could be to the reality of what actually is. And not everyone is ready for that transition. They may want the connection, but the fear of what pursuing it might entail can be paralyzing. The fear of vulnerability is one of the most powerful and often unspoken forces that drive a person's behavior, especially when it comes to emotional connections. When someone craves your attention or presence but hesitates to contact you, it's usually because of their underlying fear of being vulnerable. Vulnerability by its very nature involves exposing parts of ourselves that we keep guarded, our emotions, our desires, our fears, and our needs. For many people, this level of exposure feels dangerous. It forces them to confront not just the possibility of rejection, but also the uncertainty of how someone else will perceive them. When someone craves you but never reaches out, their fear of vulnerability often manifests as an internal battle. On one hand, they long for the connection, the emotional intimacy, the closeness, and the potential for something meaningful. On the other hand, the thought of actually putting themselves out there, reaching out, and potentially being met with indifference or rejection can feel unbearable. This creates an emotional tug-of-war where the person craves something that seems emotionally safe in their imagination, but the reality of initiating contact would require them to be open and raw in a way that feels uncomfortable or even unsafe. The fear of vulnerability is rooted in deeper insecurities and past experiences. People who've been hurt before, whether through rejection, abandonment, or betrayal, often develop an unconscious defense mechanism. They avoid situations that might trigger those painful emotions again. Craving a connection, yet holding back from initiating it, is a way of protecting themselves from repeating past emotional wounds. They may not consciously realize it, but the fear of being rejected or hurt is so powerful that it keeps them stuck in a cycle of desire without action. Furthermore, vulnerability also requires a level of trust that not everyone is ready to give. Trust is built over time and requires a person to take risks, open up, and allow themselves to be seen in their entirety. For someone who craves connection but avoids reaching out, there may be a deep mistrust in others or in themselves. They may fear that if they allow someone else to see them completely, they will be judged, criticized, or rejected. This fear can be paralyzing, and as a result, they might crave your presence without feeling able to take that vulnerable step of opening up or making contact. Additionally, vulnerability can stir up feelings of inadequacy. The fear of not being enough or not measuring up to someone else's expectations often keeps people from taking action. If they feel that they are not worthy of the connection or that they might not be able to live up to the ideal they have of you or themselves, they may hold back. This fear of inadequacy keeps them in the realm of fantasy, where they can crave your attention and affection without ever having to face the pressure or responsibility that comes with a real, active relationship. In short, the fear of vulnerability is an emotional barrier that keeps many people from pursuing what they crave. They desire the connection, but the thought of being open and exposed feels too risky. Rather than risk disappointment, rejection, or the pain of vulnerability, they may choose to remain in the safety of craving from a distance, avoiding the potential discomfort of true emotional engagement. When someone craves your presence but never contacts you, it's often a reflection of a deeper issue with self-worth. This plays a crucial role in understanding the dynamics of their behavior. Self-worth is the foundation upon which all of our actions and decisions are based. It dictates how we view ourselves, our value in relationships, and what we feel we deserve. If someone is hesitant to contact you, even when they crave a connection, it might be because they don't believe they are worthy of the type of relationship or intimacy they desire. In many cases, people's self-worth is fragile, shaped by past experiences, insecurities, and unaddressed emotional wounds. They might crave the closeness and connection you offer, but deep down, they may not feel deserving of that kind of emotional investment. They might feel unworthy of love, affection, or attention, which creates an internal conflict. This lack of self-worth can make them hesitate to take the necessary steps toward building a relationship because subconsciously they believe they aren't worthy of the intimacy or emotional openness that comes with it. The desire to connect is there, but the internal belief that they don't deserve it holds them back. This issue with self-worth can also manifest in a fear of vulnerability, as mentioned earlier. Vulnerability is a powerful act, and when someone doesn't feel worthy, they may resist it because they fear exposing themselves in a way that could lead to rejection or judgment. If someone has been hurt in the past or has experienced rejection, they may internalize those negative experiences and start to believe that they are not good enough. As a result, they might crave a connection with you, but the thought of taking the risk to reach out or deepen the relationship triggers their fears of inadequacy. They may feel like they'll never measure up to the expectations, so they avoid taking any action at all, fearing that any contact will expose their perceived flaws. In addition, their self-worth might be tied to how others perceive them, especially in romantic or personal contexts. If they don't feel validated or accepted by you, it can further reinforce the belief that they aren't enough. This validation-seeking behavior can lead them to crave your attention but be unable to take the necessary step to reach out. They might want to feel important to you, but if they don't believe they can earn that place in your life, they become paralyzed by self-doubt. Instead of contacting you, they might withdraw into themselves, convinced that they'll only be met with indifference or rejection. This lack of self-worth can also lead to a cycle of self-sabotage. When someone doesn't believe they deserve love or connection, they may subconsciously push it away. They may crave the intimacy, but in their mind, they believe they will never be able to attain it or sustain it. So rather than risk facing the possibility of being hurt or rejected, they avoid taking the steps necessary to build a meaningful relationship with you. It's easier to stay in the realm of longing and fantasy, where they can idealize the connection without ever confronting the reality of it. In essence, the struggle with self-worth can prevent someone from taking the initiative to reach out, even when they deeply crave your presence. This internal battle is about much more than just the desire for connection. It's a reflection of their inability to see themselves as worthy of the relationship or emotional intimacy they long for. The desire is real, but the belief that they are deserving of it remains out of reach. Until they can resolve these feelings of inadequacy and realize their own worth, the gap between craving and action will remain, leaving them stuck in a place of longing without the courage to pursue what they truly want. When someone craves your attention but never reaches out, it's easy to find yourself asking, why? You might be left confused and frustrated, wondering what it is that holds them back, especially when their desire is apparent. The question you should be asking, though, is not focused on their actions, but on what this situation can teach you about yourself. This shift in perspective is crucial because it empowers you to move beyond the uncertainty of their behavior and gain clarity about your own worth, your desires, and what you're truly seeking in relationships. Rather than endlessly analyzing why they are hesitant to act on their feelings, ask yourself, what is this situation teaching me about the kind of relationship I want? The way you respond to someone's lack of action is an opportunity to reflect on what you truly value and need in a connection. If someone craves you but never contacts you, it could be a sign that they are not ready to meet you where you are emotionally. In these cases, the lesson is clear. You deserve someone who doesn't just long for your attention from a distance, but is willing to actively pursue and engage with you. Their hesitation and inaction are a reflection of their own limitations, not a reflection of your value. By reframing your focus, you can begin to prioritize your own emotional needs and stop chasing someone who is not taking the necessary steps to meet those needs. This process involves understanding that you are the constant in your life. The way someone treats you or the efforts they make to build a connection should align with your standards and expectations. If you continually find yourself in situations where you are left questioning another person's intentions or their lack of action, it may be time to evaluate your own boundaries and the kinds of relationships you are willing to invest in. Are you waiting for someone who isn't ready or able to give you what you deserve? Taking a step back from focusing on their behavior allows you to center your own desires. This is about knowing what you want in a relationship, whether it's consistency, emotional intimacy, or genuine effort. If someone is hesitant to contact you despite expressing a desire to be close, it's a message that their actions are not matching their words. This mismatch can teach you the importance of alignment in relationships. The person who truly craves connection with you will not only feel that longing, but will also act on it in meaningful ways. Their silence or inaction shows you that words alone are not enough to sustain a healthy relationship. The way you approach the situation also reflects your own growth and ability to move forward. When you stop chasing someone who isn't reciprocating your efforts, you take back your power. Instead of being stuck in an endless cycle of questioning their feelings, you start asking more empowering questions. Am I investing my time and energy into someone who values me? Am I receiving the kind of connection that aligns with my needs? This shift allows you to focus on your own emotional growth, self-respect, and clarity in relationships. Ultimately, this situation is a powerful reminder that you are worthy of someone who actively chooses you. Their hesitation to contact you, even when they crave you, highlights the fact that they may not be ready to meet you at the level you deserve. Rather than endlessly wondering why they won't take action, use this as an opportunity to align with your own desires and goals. The real lesson lies in how you choose to value yourself and demand more from those who wish to be part of your life. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where someone craves your attention but never reaches out, take a moment to reflect on what this experience is teaching you. Understand that it's not about their actions or their inability to step forward. It's about your own growth, your self-worth, and the standards you set for the connections you allow into your life. You deserve someone who not only desires your presence, but is ready to act on that desire, to show up and to create something real with you. This is your reminder that you are not defined by the actions or inactions of others. You are defined by your own strength, by the clarity of what you need, and by the belief that you deserve relationships that honor and respect who you are. Don't settle for longing without reciprocation. Trust that when you focus on your own value, on what you truly deserve, the right people will show up in the right way. And as you continue to grow in self-awareness and self-love, you'll begin to attract the kind of connection that not only satisfies your cravings, but enriches your life in ways you never imagined. Now, step forward with confidence, knowing that the lessons you've learned from these experiences are shaping you into someone who is not just waiting for love, but actively creating the space for it to thrive. The journey to the right connection begins with understanding the importance of your own worth, and once you realize that, nothing will hold you back.